How do I find a new job? How can I make a career change? And the biggest question of all, can I really find a career that I love? Hey, my name is Jen Smith, and I believe career success doesn't have to be at the expense of living a radiantly happy and healthy lifestyle. As a former HR leader and recruiter turned career coach, I get what companies are looking for when hiring top talent. What that means for you is an unmatched combination of insider knowledge and the best kept secrets about making heart-based career changes and navigating the ups and downs of job searching in today's world of work. Whether you're a recent graduate navigating the job market for the first time or a seasoned professional ready for a career change, this show is for you. So grab your coffee or your kombucha, pull up a seat, and get ready to be challenged and inspired to move beyond your self-doubt and take the right next steps towards landing a career you love. Because you deserve a long, radiantly happy and healthy career. This is the Flourish Careers Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Flourish Careers Podcast. I'm Jen Smith, your host, and today we are diving into the first of our 3-part series on letting go. It's October. As the leaves fall and the air gets crisp here in Western New York, nature is showing us how to let go. And I felt like this seasonal shift provides a perfect backdrop for our discussion on letting go. And we're going to begin with this often burdensome pursuit of perfection. As you know, I am not a therapist or a counselor, but I do want to share some personal experiences and insights, hoping they might resonate and help you. So to me, perfectionism is like a double-edged sword. On one side, it drives us to strive for excellence, pushing us to achieve great things. And then on the other hand, it can hold us back, leading to stress, exhaustion, and sometimes downright misery. There seems to be a fine line between healthy perfectionism, which motivates excellent performance, and then unhealthy perfectionism, which can be debilitating. No one is born perfect, my friends. Even global icons like Beyoncé dedicate countless hours to perfecting their craft. So today, let's explore the roots of this need for perfection, some of the pitfalls associated with it, and most importantly, a few ways we can start letting go of this perfectionism mindset. I would like to start with a story from my corporate HR career. And this is from my early career and where I first noticed these perfectionism tendencies. So I was tasked with building an intern program for our entire region. So this was a very complex, demanding project that required me to start from scratch. The project involved creating policies across multiple sites and states. I had to develop comprehensive recruiting guidelines, to design practical projects for the interns to do, and then coordinate all of this across multiple teams and project elements. Now, this was when I first transitioned into HR from operations. That was a massive shift that not many people had undertaken, and I was determined to prove myself. I wanted to show everyone that I was capable and deserving of this new role. Therefore, I spent countless hours perfecting every detail. I was benchmarking with other companies, rechecking my work, and obsessing over aspects that, in hindsight, were not as critical as I had made them out to be. Every document, policy, and communication had to be flawless. I was driven by this fear of missing something or making a mistake that could undermine the program and my role in HR. The project ultimately was a success. The intern program was implemented smoothly. It received a lot of positive feedback from all levels of the organization. However, it definitely came at a significant personal cost. I remember feeling exhausted. I was stressed out. I had missed out on precious time with family and friends. And one incident stands out so vividly, I wanted to share. So I had flown to Florida to celebrate one of my best friends for her bachelorette party. We had this really fun road trip to Key West planned. And as we drove, I was in a carload full of friends ready to have fun. And I found myself leading a conference call in the backseat discussing the intern project details. My friends were laughing and chatting, and that anticipation of a fun weekend was in the air. But I was focused on my phone. And I could see their disappointed faces when they were trying to talk quieter so they weren't interrupting me. And I just felt the weight of my choices very heavily. And in that moment, I kind of realized I was ruining this for myself and my friends. And that's when I recognized that striving for perfection had taken over and it wasn't sustainable. I could have delegated that call or just postponed it until I returned. I was missing out on the joy of life, all because I couldn't let go of this need to be perfect. So maybe some of you can relate to a story like that. Now let's talk about where perfectionism comes from. I think it's important to consider the roots in order to help you let it go. For some folks, it can stem from a fear of failure or a need for approval. It can be rooted in childhood experiences. There's a ton of societal expectations, especially with social media where we're seeing everyone's highlight reels. Also could be layers of insecurities. Personally, for me, there's this need for approval that I've experienced a lot in my life. Growing up, I always wanted to be good at everything I did, whether it was academics or sports. And I remember the feeling of pride and validation when my parents praised my report cards or when teachers complimented me on a job well done. And interestingly enough, I was not a straight A student. I really struggled with test taking, which often impacted my performance. However, give me a project and I would excel. I loved hands-on practical work where I could pour my energy into perfecting every detail. So there was this discrepancy between not being good at taking tests and then overcompensating for that in the project work. And that made me feel like I had to work even harder to prove myself, which reinforced these perfectionistic tendencies. Societal expectations also played a significant role. In the corporate world, especially in HR, there's this unspoken pressure to be flawless. You're often the one setting standards, creating policies, and ensuring everything runs smoothly. Any mistake can feel like a personal or professional failure, and that environment can make perfectionism feel like it's the only option to succeed. Insecurities add another layer to this. The fear of being judged or not good enough can drive perfectionistic behaviors. It's as if achieving perfection can shield us from criticism and make us feel more secure in our abilities and roles. This definitely showed up for me with feelings of proving myself when I first went into HR. I felt really lucky to be in that position, and I felt like I had to show that I had something valuable to offer. For me, I believe that if I could just be perfect, I would be accepted and respected and valued. And it took a lot of self-reflection to realize that this mindset was not sustainable and it was actually detrimental to my well-being and happiness. So those are some of the roots where perfectionism might come from. Let's talk about the pitfalls of perfectionism. While striving for excellence is admirable, perfectionism can lead to many negative consequences. And of course, I've experienced some of these firsthand. For example, perfectionism can cause procrastination, which, by the way, we are going to talk about in our Letting Go series. It's actually episode 3 in this series. But I remember countless times sitting at my desk, almost feeling paralyzed by the fear that I wouldn't be able to complete something perfectly, so I just didn't start. So rather than diving in and making progress, I delayed starting, almost waiting for this perfect moment or this perfect idea to come to me. And that hesitation often resulted in last-minute scrambles where the quality of my work suffered due to a time crunch. So the idea here is to just take some tiny action. And I've heard someone say in the past, the antidote to perfection is action in progress. So if you find yourself in that paralysis or procrastination mode, consider taking tiny action, which we are going to talk about more in a minute. Perfectionism can also lead to exhaustion. During the intern program project I mentioned earlier, I spent countless late nights in the office going over every single detail repeatedly. And the stress of maintaining those high standards ended up taking a toll. I was super exhausted by the end of that project, and my productivity in my day-to-day job really plummeted because I was running on empty. That emotional and physical strain was intense, and it became clear that this quest for perfection was not sustainable. Another major pitfall is that perfectionism can stifle creativity and innovation. So this pursuit for everything to be perfect deters us from thinking outside the box and bringing innovative solutions to the table. I remember a time where one of the organizations I was working for was struggling with employee retention, particularly among the early career workforce. And at the time, I heard about this new idea for a reverse mentorship program where early career employees could mentor more senior leadership or executive on topics like emerging technologies or social media trends or evolving work-life balance expectations. And I'm sure you've heard of this at this point, but it was a pretty new idea back then. And the concept was to bridge the generational gap and give early career employees a sense of value and purpose, and at the same time, help the leadership team stay current with rapidly changing and evolving workplace dynamics. So I spent weeks researching and refining and putting this proposal together. I had a detailed implementation plan. I had thought through different challenges, all the things. However, as the days approached to present it, I was doubting myself. I was worried about all the things. What if the executives felt that it undermined their leadership? What if the early career participants didn't want to do it? What if it inadvertently created tension between the generations? I had all these thoughts that I was telling myself, and I just kept saying I need more time to perfect the idea. Those weeks turned into months, and the opportunity passed. We continued to struggle with retention, and I later learned, and we now know, that this reverse mentoring program can be a huge success as long as it fits in with the company culture. So that experience taught me a pretty valuable lesson about the dangers of perfectionism in innovation. When we seek this flawless plan, it can deprive the organization of a potentially transformative and maybe even fun initiative. So this really reinforced the importance of thinking through, embracing calculated risks, and then viewing imperfection as a natural part of the innovation and creativity process. So some of these personal experiences that I've shared here have taught me that while perfectionism might drive short-term success, its long-term consequences can be damaging. Letting go of the need to be perfect has allowed me to embrace a much more balanced and fulfilling approach to work and life. So let's talk through a couple ways to let go and break away from this perfectionism mindset. I'm going to share with you my top 3 tips that have helped me the most through the years. First and foremost, consider setting intentions versus goals. This is all about progress and potentially even enjoying the process versus striving for a result or perfection. So rather than setting rigid, SMART goals that demand perfection or some unachievable result, focus on setting intentions and enjoying the process. Intentions are about the journey, not the destination. So, for example, during that intern program project, if I shifted my mindset to prioritize learning and growth and what I was gaining from learning different policies in different states and different pay structures and hiring guidelines versus achieving flawless execution, I probably would have had a little more fun. So that change in perspective could have allowed me to appreciate small wins and the learnings that I was gaining and the progress that we were making along the way, reducing that pressure to be perfect. The next tip I have here is probably my favorite one, and it's what I call drafting your way to success. I remember when I learned this and when I started doing it, it was a complete game changer. The idea here is to submit your work as a draft before the deadline. Think about it. When you label something as a draft, you're instantly taking some of that pressure off. It's like telling yourself and others, hey, this is a work in progress. And that feels pretty liberating. You get to share your ideas early, get feedback sooner, which often leads to a better result anyways. Plus, it gives you a chance to improve things step by step instead of all that weight on your shoulder trying to nail it all at once. It's also a great way to beat that deadline stress. So if you've got something in early, even if it's not the final version, you've completed a big step in the project. And you know what? It helps you practice letting go of that need for everything to be perfect right off the bat. Also, in a team setting, this can really shift the dynamic or the culture of the team. Instead of everyone hiding away until they think their work is flawless, you start seeing more collaboration and this ongoing continuous improvement, which can bring a really fun dynamic to a team. Okay, so we've talked about setting intentions versus rigid SMART goals. We've talked about drafting your way to success. The third tip I want to share is taking tiny action, breaking things into manageable steps. As I mentioned earlier, the antidote to perfection is action and progress. So when you're faced with a daunting task and you think it needs to be perfect, break it down into smaller, manageable steps. I remember when I had to create the recruiting guidelines for the intern program, and that sheer volume of work seemed overwhelming. Multiple sites and states, different hiring guidelines and pay structures. I had no idea about any of it, and it made me really nervous. If I would have thought about breaking it down into smaller steps, like maybe drafting policies for each site individually, or potentially asking the HR rep at each site to share their hiring guidelines, it would have helped me to avoid the stress that perfectionism can cause. Also, when you tell yourself you're going to do just one step, it's so much easier to move forward. I do this with exercise all the time. I say, hey, Jen, just go get on that Peloton for 10 minutes. And that 10 minutes turns into 10 more. And by the time I'm done, I have a 30-minute workout in. So by setting achievable steps, it can help us maintain that momentum and reduce the stress of trying to accomplish everything all at once. Now, here's a bonus tip for you. And I heard this a while ago and it stuck with me, so I wanted to share. Consider embracing the concept of being joyfully ambitious. So the pursuit of our ambitious intentions or goals with a spirit of joy and enthusiasm. So this suggests that we can strive for high achievement while maintaining a positive, lighthearted attitude. So we're blending dedication with delight. And I just love this. It's an approach that prioritizes finding pleasure in the process of striving toward success, which makes the journey much more fulfilling as well as the result. Now, as we come to a close here, I want to say letting go of perfectionism requires patience and practice. It does not happen overnight. By setting intentions versus rigid SMART goals, submitting drafts for feedback, taking tiny action, and of course, celebrating everything, you can begin to let go of this perfectionism mindset and lead a more fulfilling lifestyle. My favorite mantra is progress over perfection. I have it written on a Post-it here at my desk, and it's always a constant reminder. Now for your 5 minutes to flourish homework assignment. So for today, I would love for you to spend 5 minutes reflecting on an area of your career where perfectionism has taken hold. Write down 2 or 3 ways that it's impacting you negatively, and then one tiny step you can take to start letting go. Maybe that's delegating a task or simply putting on a Post-it note, progress over perfection. In summary, today we explored the origins of perfectionism and its pitfalls. We discussed how to let go of the perfectionism mindset by setting intentions, taking tiny actions, using draft mode, and being joyfully ambitious. Remember that letting go of perfectionism starts with a small, intentional step. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this episode helpful, and if you did, please consider recommending it to a friend. Stay tuned for the next part of our Letting Go series, where we're going to dive into another common challenge: people pleasing. As always, the notes from today's episode can be found on the blog at flourish.careers/blog. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.